With the bases finally fixed on this whole Parker Hill Lee Enfield conversion here, hopefully, we're finally ready to go through the 4-step process on this rifle for dialing in a rifle. So let's see if we can't get this one ready to go into the field hunting. For me, there's 4 basic steps to really dialing in a hunting rifle. And that's finding your load for that rifle, factory ammunition or hand loads, chronographing that load so you get your velocities, calculating your maximum point blank range, and finally zeroing your scope for that maximum point blank range. Now all of that isn't necessary for a hunting rifle. You don't have to do it, which is a good thing given the current state of ammo prices and ammo availability and all that good stuff. But as far as for really dialing one in, I think it makes a difference. For instance, finding your load. All right, so that means picking out the specific bullets you want to use for whatever you're doing, however you're hunting, whatever you think is going to give you the performance you need. Winchester PowerPoint, Remington core lock, Nosler ballistic tip, whatever. Okay, so you pick the bullets you want as far as its construction that's going to give you what you think. Well, then picking what weight bullet for the rifle. Which one does your rifle want to shoot? Which is going to give you the flattest trajectory or going to hit the hardest? Just all depending on what you're going to do. All of that's part of dialing one in. Right? All of us can't do that now, especially given the current state of ammo prices and availability. And as far as velocities, all of us don't have access to a chronograph. But for me, all of that is important if we can do it. So let me go through my process on this rifle, and then at the end, you let me know what you think. I've got 3 types of ammunition to choose from here, and we're doing factory ammunition today. We've got Winchester PowerPoints, Federal Power Shocks, Remington core locks. And we're gonna fire a 3-shot group from each, collect their data, and then we'll look at what we got. Now that we've got the shooting done, we've got some numbers here and we can look at these and we can start to make some decisions now. So let's see exactly what we have. Okay, for the Remington 180 grain core locks, the advertised velocity is 2,460 feet per second. The actual velocity out of our 3-shot group was 2,421 feet a second. That's pretty good. I'm not complaining about that a bit. And keep in mind our actual velocity is going to be slightly higher because the chronograph was 3 to 4 yards in front of the rifle, so it wasn't exactly at the muzzle. Not going to make much of a difference, but a little bit. And I have no doubt that the ammunition, the factory ammunition, they came up with their velocities using standard Lee Enfield because that is by far the most popular rifle for 303 British, and that's a 24, 25-inch barrel. Whereas with this Parker Hill conversion, it's a 22-inch barrel. So I'm really impressed with that velocity there. And that is a little slow, 2,400 feet per second. It's a 180 grain bullet. Okay, so that's pretty good. All right, 3-shot group. This wasn't so good. We're at 2 inches, 310 thousandths. Yeah, we'll talk more about that in just a minute. Okay, our G1 ballistic coefficient, that's 0.247. And all the ballistic coefficient is aerodynamics. It's not that big of a deal for this rifle because I'm setting this up to be a woods gun, brush, woods, that type of thing. So I'm not setting this up to be a long-range precision rifle by any means. But we'll use the ballistic coefficient when we come up to maximum point blank range for this rifle. And maximum point blank range. Easiest way to do that, go to your phone or your computer, do a search and type in maximum point blank range calculator. And you'll come up with shooterscalculator.com, free website. I use it regularly, no affiliation with them whatsoever. It's just, they have some useful tools. All right, and if you go to maximum point blank range calculator there, you'll see all the information we have to put in. So we start off with drag function, G1. All that is just something they use for numbers, for calculations. So for a standard bullet, when you look up your ballistic coefficient from the manufacturer usually, or for these, it's not on the box. I had to do some searching, and different people that carried this particular ammunition, different websites, where they had the table at the bottom with, you know, all the different little pieces of information. If you look, you'll find one that says ballistic coefficient. And 9 out of 10 times, it's also going to say G1 ballistic coefficient. If you have ammunition that they're not using the G1 ballistic coefficient, it's because there's the bullet itself has a different geometry to it. So it might say G2, G5, G8. All right, those are rare. It's almost always going to be G1, especially for just normal hunting ammunition. But if you ever see G2, well, that's, or something else, that's where that comes in. Okay, so on our maximum point blank range calculator, G1, our ballistic coefficient, we're at 0.247 for the 180 grain core lock. The higher the ballistic coefficient, the more aerodynamic the bullet is. All right, so 0.247, what that says is that these 180 grain core locks are not aerodynamic at all in the least. They're not going to be. This is a round nose bullet. And closer ranges, I love a round nose. I love a round nose bullet for the woods and for the brush. For me, I get a much more dependable mushroom. It's going to expand quicker. And at these lower velocities with 3, round nose bullet's just perfect. Okay, so if we plug that in for our sight height, that's the difference between the center of the scope and the center of the bore. And they just have a 1.5 inches in there, just standard. I leave it at that because I always mount my scopes really low, and that's usually about where I'm at. If you go mounting a scope really high, well, just get a scale and measure from the center of the scope to where you think the center of the bore is and use that number. You can just stick with the 1.5, you're gonna be pretty close. But okay, target size. I like to use 6-inch diameter. You can put in 8-inch, you can put in 4-inch, you can put in whatever you want. I just like a 6-inch. That's a good number for deer, I think, and I like to err on the side of caution, so I use the 6-inch instead of 8-inch. Okay, now if we hit calculate point blank range, it gives us our near zero. So keep in mind the bullet's traveling at an arc. It's literally going up, so you've got your line of sight through the scope. At some point, your line of sight through the scope and your muzzle, the bullet's traveling up from the muzzle, it's going to cross the line of sight from the scope. And it's going to do it at 2 places because the bullet's traveling on an arc. the first place is your near zero. So that's going to be 20 yards. Our far zero, 189 yards. So it's going to start back down at 189 yards. Minimum point blank range, 0. We're at the muzzle. Maximum point blank range, 221 yards. Okay, so for this cartridge, with the velocities we're getting, we can zero this rifle and we can hit a 6-inch diameter with no holdover. We can just hold the crosshairs dead center from the muzzle to 221 yards. That's useful information. So I know once I get out past 221 yards, I'm gonna have to start doing some holdover or adjusting turrets or something, because I'm gonna be dropping too low, or I will be below at least 6 inches, or that 6-inch diameter, 3 inches below center. All right. So that's just useful information. And we don't always have time to make adjustments. That's why that's useful to know. That's why we're setting up to maximum point blank range for a hunting rifle. If a deer just jumps out and you've got just a second to make the shot, you don't have time to be making adjustments. You got to put the crosshairs on them, pull the trigger, and if you go by this, when you pull that trigger and you make a good shot, you're carrying a deer home. So that's the advantage of maximum point blank range. And for this, we need to zero this rifle at 2.95 inches high, 2.96 inches high at 100 yards. So if we've got this set up right and we zero our scope so that we're right at 3 inches above the center of the target, so that would be right here, actually slightly below it, very slightly, that's going to give us our best maximum point blank range. And because these bullets are so slow, we're using a 6-inch diameter. We're zeroing at almost 3 inches high at 100 yards. That tells us the top of our arc is right at that 100-yard mark. And that makes sense because our maximum point blank range is 221 yards. So right after 100 yards, it's falling off, and from then on, it's falling until it eventually, at 221 yards, it's actually out of our 6-inch circle. Okay, so that's what we've got with the Remington 180 grain core locks. Now for the Winchester 180 grain power points. We got advertised velocity, 2,460 feet per second. We've got our actual velocity of 2,278 feet per second. All right, that's slow. That's really slow. I mean, even for a 180 grain bullet, that's slow. And way below the advertised velocity, which is why I'm a firm believer everybody needs to go. You need to chronograph your velocities for your rifle. You can't go by the advertised velocities. I mean, we're way below the advertised. And that's not meant to be any kind of slight against Winchester. Not in the least. Every barrel's different. Every barrel shoots differently. Every barrel gives different velocities. You put that same Winchester 180 grain power point in a standard Lee Enfield with the standard length barrel, it might very well get that 2,460 feet per second. Your standard Lee Enfield rifle with the standard length barrel, maybe that barrel's got more wear than other barrels, so you could still be really low on your velocity due to, that particular rifle. Every barrel's different. Every load here is going to shoot different. Now that's why we need to chronograph our velocities if we can. Okay, so we're 2,278 feet per second. 3-shot group. That'd be 880 thousandths of an inch shot group. Sub MOA. Okay, I was really tickled with that. We know this rifle has some serious accuracy potential. You know, it's factory ammo with a non-free floated barrel and 2x7 scope. Not the steadiest bench in the world. Kind of breezy that day. 100 yards. We're sub MOA with this particular load right here from Winchester. It's such a slow velocity though. And that's, all right, we'll get back to that in a minute. And with this particular load, our G1 ballistic coefficient is 0.368. So it's significantly higher or more aerodynamic than the Remington core locks, which it's not a round nose, it's a pointed bullet. So we would expect that. Our maximum point blank range with the Winchester 180 grain power points at that velocity is going to be 223 yards. And we're starting to see here where that ballistic coefficient versus velocity comes in. The Remington had a significantly higher velocity than the Winchester. But the Winchester had a significantly higher ballistic coefficient, which is aerodynamics. What your aerodynamics do, it determines how fast your bullet's going to slow down. The less aerodynamic your bullet is, the quicker it's going to slow down due to drag. So we've got almost identical maximum point blank range between the Remington and the Winchester. One's got a much higher velocity, the other's got a much higher ballistic coefficient. In the end, they come out about the same. So we're 223 yard maximum point blank range on the Winchester. And we would need to zero at 2.97 inches high with the Winchester, very similar to the Remington, in order to hit that 6-inch diameter from the muzzle out to its maximum point blank range, which is 223 yards. Okay. Finally, we had the Federal 150 grain power shocks. Advertised velocity, 2,690 feet per second. Actual velocity, 2,635 feet per second. I'm really happy with that. I mean, that's pretty good velocity. We're getting really close to the advertised velocity. You know, we're using a 22-inch barrel, and I'm sure they used a full-length Lee-Enfield barrel for their test rifle, or maybe even a custom barrel, but it would have probably been about the length of a Lee-Enfield barrel. Shot group, 2 inches with the Federal. Yeah, over twice as large as with the Winchester. And we'll get back to the shot groups in a minute. I know I keep saying that. Okay, our G1 ballistic coefficient, 0.356. Not bad on the ballistic coefficient. I wouldn't expect it to be as high of a ballistic coefficient or as aerodynamic as the Winchester. 150 grain bullet. It's a shorter bullet than the 180 grain power point. And generally shorter bullets, lighter bullets, have lower, or they're less aerodynamic. So it's a lower ballistic coefficient. But that's still really good. 0.356 for a 150 grain bullet. I'm impressed with that. Okay, maximum point blank range, and this is where that much higher velocity comes in, 254 yards. Okay, so with the Federal power shocks, 150 grain, with that higher velocity, we can hit a 6-inch diameter with no holdover out to 254 yards with this rifle. That's pretty good reach. I mean, that's not 270 territory by any means, but we're 50 yards off from it. That's not bad. Not bad at all. And we would zero at 2.8 inches high at 100 yards with the 150 grains versus almost 3 inches with the others. And that's because that arc I was talking about, the very top of that arc is going to be further out with the Federals because it is such a higher velocity. So that's what we got. That's where we are. Now for those shot groups. And keep in mind, these factors, the 4 steps for dialing in a rifle. So choosing a load, getting the velocity, calculating the maximum point blank range, zeroing the rifle. A lot of this is all interrelated. So velocity and maximum point blank range. For me, personally, how well my hunting ammunition performs is a really big factor when picking my load. Those are going to play into that. Another huge factor, normally the biggest factor for me when choosing a load, is the accuracy, the shot group size. Now, 9 out of 10 times, I'm going to go with accuracy over velocity every time. I mean, just normal circumstances. But I don't normally have over a 350 feet per second difference between my accuracy load, the 180 grain Winchesters, and my best performance load, velocity-wise, the 150 grain Federals. Over 350 feet per second is pretty substantial. And we are talking 150 grain bullet versus 180. 150 grain bullet's more than enough for deer. And if it were a larger game, I would go with the 180s. Better penetration generally with the heavier bullet. In this case, I would have to look up the energies of it because that Winchester is going pretty slow. Matter of fact, it's 100 feet, couple hundred feet per second over 170 grain 30-30 territory. Big difference there. So yeah, and keep in mind, usually this is what we run into when we're picking a load. We've got 3 different types of ammunition here. So we have 3 different loads, and if we were looking at hand loads, 3 different hand loads, it'd be the exact same thing. Just from random chance, one of these 3 is going to be the best performer velocity-wise. And then from random chance, one of these 3 is going to be the most accurate. Well, just from, statistical probabilities, the probability that your highest performing velocity-wise load is also going to be your most accurate load's slim. It's rare that we come up with a load that is our most accurate and our best performer. Usually those velocities are close enough, though, that I'll go with the most accurate load. In this case, yes, it's not quite the case. Okay. And we've got other factors involved here also in choosing a load. The core locks are out. We're not even considering these. I don't know what happened, but these all of a sudden became more valuable than gold. Literally. I guess with Remington shutting down like it did and the whole ammo shortage thing, and I don't even know if Remington's producing ammo again. I don't know if they're ever going to produce these again. I don't know what happened. But these right here were before at several reputable online retailers. These were selling for up close to $100 a box. Optics Planet, $97 a box, $5 a shot for these. They're out of them now, no stock. But before they ran out, they were, yeah. I'm guessing a lot of people just really loved these cartridges and they wanted to stock up when they heard Remington was closing, going bankrupt and all that. They wanted to make sure they had some on hand. They were willing to pay whatever they had to pay to get some. All right. These are pretty much gone now. So we're not even looking at these. That leaves us with the Winchester and the Federals. And the reason I mention that, I don't like straight lines in my shot groups. What we're looking for with the shot groups to see what the natural deviation is, the natural random deviation in our accuracy. Straight lines don't occur in nature normally. That's not natural. So that tells me something was going on here, and it was probably everything just settling in from where I put this new scope on here. And this was my bore sight shot. It was with the core lock. I made an adjustment to get it on center, on target. This was my next shot. It was way too high. This was my third shot. Third shot was exactly where it should have been. I'm guessing we just had some movement with things settling in. I would love to shoot another 3-shot group there. But being that I only have 3 shots left of these, it's not really an option with these. With the Federals, I do have a few more cartridges. So I want to reshoot this group here. That might be just what it does. And these are just 3-shot groups. We don't know a lot from a 3-shot group. I could have got lucky on this with the Winchester. I might not ever see a sub-MOA group out of this rifle again. That could have just been sheer luck. At the same time, that might be just what this rifle shoots with the 180 grain Winchesters. So that's where, making a few trips to the range comes in, and after you shoot enough small groups with the rifle, then you can say, okay, I'm confident this rifle shoots this size group. Yeah, we're low on ammo with the Winchesters too. They're going to be a lot easier to get in the future than the Remingtons, I'm sure, and the prices weren't nearly as high on the PowerPoints. And we do have enough rounds here. We can hunt with them this coming season, so we're not ruling them out. But I do have more of the Federals than anything, and I can spare 3 shots of those to get another 3-shot group. And my guess is, between it being as windy as it was, the bench not being the most sturdiest, me still getting warmed up, I'm guessing I can get a smaller group out of that Federal. At least I'm hoping so. So at some point before season, we'll carry the Federals out to 150 grains, get another 3-shot group to confirm that's where we're at 2 inches, or we're under that. And if I can get anything close to an inch, inch and a half, just because of the difference in velocity there, I would go with the Federals over the Winchester in this instance. That's where we're at with this rifle right now, and we're making our decisions here now based on some actual data, and that's the whole point of this with the 4 steps to dialing in a hunting rifle. When we do make our final choice on this, which I'm guessing is going to be the Federal, and then we do zero our rifle to that load for that maximum point blank range, this rifle will be ready to hunt. Now, again, we don't have to do all of this. This isn't required. I could have just got the Federals, or I could have got any of these 3. A box of ammunition, went to the range, zeroed it, and called it good. Picked a random number. Okay, we'll zero it 2 inches high at 100 yards. And especially for what I'm doing with this rifle, with it being the woods and intermediate range, or setting it up for the woods and intermediate ranges, probably wouldn't have ever had a problem. But that's the difference between really dialing in a rifle, walking into the woods knowing exactly what you have and what you can do with it. That's the difference between really dialing in a rifle versus getting out into the field, and then all of a sudden you find yourself trying to make a 240-yard shot with a bullet that's going a lot slower than the advertised velocity, that you didn't zero high enough at 100 yards to take full advantage of the maximum point blank range, and you end up missing the animal or wounding it and don't find it. Yeah, that's the difference. And that's why, we all have our own opinion, different circumstances. But I think those extra steps in dialing in a hunting rifle, the actual, intentionally picking the load if you can, if you've got ammo to choose from, and then actually getting the velocities if you can get access to a chronograph, or go ahead and buy one. They're not that expensive these days. And then using the maximum point blank range calculator, getting some actual numbers to zero your scope to, and then zeroing the scope to that. I think that makes a big difference. That so often can mean the difference between bringing a deer home versus trying to track one and you don't ever find it. So, yeah. So anyway, I'd like to get your opinion on that. Do you think, after seeing all of this, going through the numbers, seeing what's involved, do you think it's worth the extra effort? Curious to hear your thoughts. Okay, so I'm excited on this one. And next time I go to the range, we'll carry this one along and we'll have it dialed in, and this will be ready for deer season when it finally gets here. So I didn't wait till the last second this year. And I think that's going to cover everything for today. So check in next week, because unlike normally, I actually know what we're going to work on next week. I'm getting back to this 1903 A3 stock. I think y'all are going to enjoy what we do with this one. So make sure you hit the subscribe button and notification bell if you want to see what we get done on this one next Sunday. And God bless and have a good day.